I never thought a single lightning strike could change the way you see the world. That night I was sitting by my window, the rain hammering against the glass like a warning drum, when the sky split with a jagged streak of light so bright it burned behind my eyelids. The thunder that followed didn't just rumble, it screamed, vibrating through the walls, through the floor, through me. Something in the air shifted, charged with an energy I couldn't explain, something alive and watching. I remember clutching the windowsill, heart hammering, thinking it was just a storm like any other. But then the lights flickered. Not once, but in a pattern that didn't match the storm outside. My phone buzzed with a notification I didn't recognize, showing a message that said only, "You shouldn't be here." I stared at it for a long moment, frozen, wondering if the rain and lightning had scrambled my reality, or if someone or something was trying to reach me. Most people don't survive storms like the one that hit that night, not without a story they'll never tell. And tonight, I'm going to share 3 true lightning horror stories that almost no one survived. Each one of them begins ordinary, familiar even, before twisting into something that makes you question what you believe about storms, electricity, and the world around you. These aren't the kind of stories the news covers. These are the ones that linger in your mind, long after the rain has stopped, long after the thunder fades. You might want to check your window, or stay away from it. Because lightning isn't always random. Sometimes it chooses, sometimes it watches. And what I'm about to tell you isn't something you'll hear on the news. It's closer to the kind of knowledge you're not meant to possess, but once you hear it, there's no turning back. All 3 of these events share something terrifying, something you won't see coming. By the time we reach the last story, you might start noticing patterns in the next storm that passes overhead. You might even wonder if the lightning outside your own window is simply natural, or if it's waiting, watching, calculating. Tonight, we step into that world, and once we do, there's no going back. It was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway, just me and my brother, retreating to a small, isolated cabin in the mountains to escape the chaos of the city. The kind of trip where you laugh over burned toast, sip cheap whiskey by the fire, and let the silence stretch comfortably around you. I never imagined that a storm could turn that silence into something alive. The first hints came as ordinary. Rain tapping against the roof, wind rattling the shutters. We joked about the storm, pretending we weren't both tense as lightning forked across the sky. "It's just weather," I said, forcing a laugh. My brother grinned, nodding, but I caught the way his hands trembled around his mug. Then it hit. A strike so close it felt like the sky had slammed a fist into the earth. The window shuttered. The lights went out, and in that instant, the cabin seemed to inhale, pulling the air into some unseen void. For a moment, everything was frozen. Then the electronics started. The radio turned on by itself, static hissing like a warning. My phone screen lit up with messages I didn't send. The clock on the wall spun backward, then stopped. Shadows stretched across the walls, moving against the flow of the flickering firelight. "Did you see that?" My brother whispered, voice tight. I think it's just the storm," I stammered, but even as I said it, I didn't believe it. There was something in the way the shadows shifted, deliberate, almost sentient. I could feel it watching. And that's when I noticed the first anomaly. The candle flames on the table flickered toward one corner of the room, as if drawn by an invisible hand. A low hum filled the air, like electricity vibrating through the walls, crawling across every surface. We tried to rationalize. "It's just static," I said. "A power surge." My brother shook his head. "It's moving. Look at the shadows. They're moving wrong." We both fell silent, listening to the storm outside. The wind roared, the rain pelted, and in between each crash of thunder there was a strange crackling sound, almost like whispers, calling our names. Objects began shifting. A chair slid across the wooden floor by itself. A photograph of us from years ago toppled over. My laptop opened, displaying a blank screen that slowly filled with text I didn't type. "You noticed." I froze, staring at it. My brother's eyes were wide with disbelief. I think it knows we're paying attention," he whispered. We spent hours watching, unable to look away, caught between curiosity and terror. Every lightning strike seemed purposeful, each flash highlighting new anomalies, shadows curling toward corners, reflections in the windows that weren't ours. Sometimes I swore I saw shapes outside moving in impossible ways. vanishing before I could point them out. Sleep was impossible. When one of us tried to close our eyes, the hum grew louder, more insistent, like it was aware we were trying to hide. The storm outside became a metronome of dread, each strike marking some unknowable rhythm. I realized that this wasn't random. The lightning, the sounds, the objects, it was all part of something that noticed us, that responded to us. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the cabin drenched and eerily silent. Yet the feeling of being watched lingered. The shadows that had crawled along the walls seemed to have left fingerprints on my memory. And the strangest part? The phone messages, the laptop text, the inexplicable movements, they were all gone, like the storm had never touched us at all. We left the cabin without a word, neither of us willing to revisit what had happened. But as I drove down the winding mountain road, I couldn't shake the certainty that the storm had singled us out, that lightning, something beyond mere electricity, had taken notice. Some people say this only happens to those who notice too much, those who dare to stare at the storm and see it staring back. I don't know what would have happened if we had stayed longer. I don't know what might still be following us, and if you think that's terrifying, wait until you hear what happened to James during a storm in his own backyard. James had always been the practical one. When I told him about the storm rolling in that evening, he shrugged it off, muttering something about a little thunder and rain. We were in his backyard, the suburban quiet punctuated only by the distant hum of traffic and the soft barking of his dog, Max. It was the kind of night that should have been ordinary, just clouds, wind, and occasional flashes. But the first lightning strike told a different story. It hit close, too close. The ground didn't just shake. It throbbed beneath our feet, vibrating in a way that felt alive. The backyard lights flickered and died, then came back on, showing shadows that didn't belong. Max froze, hackles raised, ears flattened. Even the cats, usually fearless indoors, crouched low, eyes wide and fixed on corners that seemed darker than they should be. What the hell was that? James whispered, though neither of us expected an answer. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Again, a message I knew he hadn't typed. On the screen, "Look closer." I felt my skin crawl. It was one thing for lightning to scare you. It was another when the storm seemed to reach into your home through your devices, pulling your attention toward something unseen. James, more curious than cautious, grabbed his camera and started filming the yard. Most people would delete the footage, but he didn't. Something told me we shouldn't, that what was happening wasn't meant to be ignored. The first few seconds were mundane, trees bending in the wind, raindrops sparkling under each flash of lightning. Then just beyond the pool, something moved, something that didn't follow the rules. It was faint, almost imperceptible, a shadow that lingered, that twisted against the way the light should have fallen. "What is that?" James muttered. He zoomed in, his fingers trembling. Every strike of lightning seemed to illuminate it differently, and every time we thought we understood what we saw, it changed. I tried to rationalize, telling myself it was a trick of the light, a reflection, a tree branch, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Objects began to react. A garden chair lifted slightly off the ground, tilting as if caught in an invisible current. The wind died in moments, leaving the stillness so heavy that each flash of lightning sounded deafening. Max barked viciously, but at nothing we could see. Then the camera caught it, something distinctly human in shape, but wrong. Limbs too long, movements too fluid, and eyes that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. I shouldn't have looked at it directly. I know that now. My stomach churned as I realized this wasn't a simple lightning strike. This was something aware, interacting with our world and with us. Every lightning flash seemed to highlight a new detail, a new impossibility. And when James tried to focus on the figure, it blurred, dissolved, and reappeared elsewhere, always just at the edge of visibility, always observing. "What are we doing?" I asked, voice barely audible over the rain. James didn't answer. His attention was glued to the screen, documenting the impossible. The footage would haunt me for weeks. Flickering shadows, objects moving with no explanation, glimpses of that figure. What you're about to see isn't for everyone. Some of you in the comments might recognize what happens next. A pattern I've seen before, a pattern in storms that shouldn't exist. By the time the storm passed, the backyard was quiet, deceptively normal. Chairs were back where they belonged, the garden untouched. Max and the cats pretending nothing had happened. But the footage remained. The shadow remained. And the feeling, the undeniable awareness that something had watched, interacted, and perhaps even chosen us, lingered in the spaces between flashes of memory. I tried to warn James about uploading the video, but he couldn't resist. He wanted the world to see it, or maybe to understand. I kept my copy, and I still watch it sometimes, just long enough to remember that storms aren't just storms, and lightning isn't just electricity. Sometimes it's something else entirely, something aware, something patient, and something that doesn't confine itself to one place. The final story isn't just terrifying, it's deadly. And it involves something that won't stay confined to a single backyard, a single cabin, or a single person. And when it strikes, it leaves no one untouched. By now, you know lightning can't just be random. I didn't fully believe it either, until the night I spent on a remote hiking trail, miles from civilization, under a storm that seemed to be alive. I was with two friends, Mark and Lena, attempting what should have been a simple overnight hike. Nothing more than sleeping under the stars, sharing stories, and laughing at our own clumsiness. The storm rolled in faster than expected. The first crack of thunder made the ground tremble, but what followed was worse. Lightning struck the open field nearby with a precision that felt impossible, hitting not just once, but in a staccato rhythm, each bolt landing so close that the air itself sizzled. My hair stood on end, my heart racing, but the terror truly began when time stopped. I remember blinking, and suddenly everything felt off. Rain froze midair, each drop a tiny prism suspended around us. The shadows of our bodies stretched unnaturally, twisting and elongating, as if caught in a lens of warped reality. Lena screamed, but her voice seemed to echo before it reached my ears, overlapping with a distorted version of itself. Mark tried to run toward the tree line, but each step felt like wading through molasses. The distance never changed. "I can't move," Lena whispered, voice tight with panic. Her eyes were wide, staring at the horizon where lightning flashed in patterns that made no sense, like symbols, like warnings. I tried to rationalize. "It's just a hallucination," I told myself. Stress, exhaustion, the storm, but the figures in the shadows didn't obey natural logic. I swear I saw shapes moving behind the lightning, watching, waiting, calculating. They mimicked our movements, mirrored us, then vanished when the light struck again. The storm escalated. I could hear Mark shouting something incoherent, but it wasn't him, at least not entirely. His voice overlapped with whispers I couldn't identify, coming from every direction at once. I clutched Lena's hand, feeling the hair on my arm stand straight as though the air itself was alive, humming, vibrating with some hidden rhythm. The earth wasn't just under our feet. It was interacting, alive, aware, and hostile, and then he disappeared. One moment, Mark was beside me, panting and trembling. The next, gone. Nothing. No trace, no scream, nothing but the hum of the storm. Lena and I called for him, but the echoes returned distorted, broken, like the storm had swallowed him whole and spat back fragments of our voices. We ran blindly, guided only by flashes of lightning that revealed the empty expanse around us, taunting us with every jagged strike. By the time the storm passed, we stumbled into the nearest clearing, soaked and disoriented. Lena sat shivering, muttering about shadows that moved with intent, shapes that weren't supposed to exist. I had no answers, only the undeniable certainty that something in the storm had singled us out, something aware of our attention, our fear, our presence. When I looked back toward the trail, I could swear I saw him, or something that wore his shape, standing at the edge of the tree line. It didn't move like a person, but it mimicked him, as if it had learned to replicate him. I realized then that the storm, the lightning, wasn't just random. There's something in storms that isn't just weather. Something that observes, chooses, and acts in ways beyond comprehension. As I pieced together what had happened that night, a terrible pattern emerged. The cabin in the mountains, James's backyard, and now this trail, they weren't isolated incidents. Lightning had singled out the observant, the curious, the ones who paid attention to its subtle cues. And the consequences weren't just physical. They were psychological, temporal, and, in ways we couldn't yet understand, permanent. These three stories are separate, yet connected. And the storm, it's not done with us. If you're watching this tonight, take a moment and glance outside your window. Check the sky. Even if there's no storm yet, the memory of these stories might make you see patterns that weren't there before, shadows that linger too long, flashes that strike with a rhythm too precise, or the sudden hum of electricity that seems aware. Storms aren't just storms anymore, and lightning isn't just a force of nature. Sometimes it's something that watches. Think back to the cabin in the mountains, to James's backyard and the hiking trail. At first glance, they seem ordinary. Weekend trips, suburban nights, an innocent hike. But each encounter shared the same thread: attention. The storms singled out those who noticed. Those who watched too closely, who dared to perceive something beyond the normal, became participants in something far older, far more deliberate than we are. Patterns emerge when you look. Lightning strikes aren't always random. Electronics act strangely around it. Shadows move in ways that defy logic. Time stretches, contracts, and in some cases disappears. What I've shown you isn't just a collection of coincidences. It's a glimpse into rules that exist outside the realm of science. Rules the storms enforce quietly, invisibly, and often lethally. I want to hear from you. Has anything like this ever happened to you during a storm? Have you felt that moment when the world pauses, when lightning seems to strike with intention, or when shadows move as if alive? Leave a comment. Share your theories. Some of you might already recognize the patterns I've described, the ones that make you feel that something is watching you even now, perhaps through the storm outside, or through the screen you're holding. Dark humor aside, if you survive a lightning strike, congratulations. Most don't. And even if you walk away physically unharmed, the psychological imprint lingers. You see, once a storm chooses you, there's no real returning to normalcy. You start noticing things others overlook, the way a hallway stretches a little too long during a downpour, or how reflections in your windows shift unnaturally with the flash of lightning. The frightening part? The danger doesn't end when the rain stops. The lightning doesn't just vanish. It observes, it waits, and it remembers. Those who've encountered it often report odd coincidences later. Sounds in the night, devices acting strangely, shadows appearing in peripheral vision. It's as if the storm leaves traces, reminders that it's still present, still aware, still capable of returning. Tonight, as you listen to these stories, remember, storms aren't just background noise. They're not just weather. And lightning isn't just electricity. They are active forces, selective and sentient, and they reward curiosity with attention. And once you have their attention, you are changed forever. Even now, long after the storms have passed, I can feel it. The lights flicker occasionally, a soft crackle echoing through the wires, almost like a whisper. I catch myself glancing at the windows, half expecting a flash of unnatural lightning, or a shadow moving just beyond the glass. It's subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. A reminder that the storm isn't done. If your house is near tall trees tonight, don't go outside. And if you do, notice the way the shadows fall, how the air hums when the wind dies down. Pay attention, because lightning has a way of choosing its next witness. And curiosity can be more dangerous than you think. The stories I shared tonight, my cabin, James's backyard, the hiking trail, they're not isolated. Each strike, each anomaly, is part of a larger pattern that stretches beyond what we see, beyond what we understand. And if you listen closely, you might hear the hum of it, waiting for the next chance to make itself known. So keep your eyes open, your doors locked, and your mind alert. Because storms aren't just storms, and the lightning, it's still watching.